If you are not legally protected in your business, you are leaving money on the table. Hey, I get it. The legal side of business can feel intimidating, but the good news is it doesn't have to be. If you want to build your business on a strong foundation, and if you want to know that your rights are protected when the unexpected happens with a client or a customer, then it's time to get legally protected. This means no more using free contracts that you downloaded off of the internet. This means partnering with a law firm that actually believes in your vision and can help you achieve it. This means legally protecting your brand so that no one can steal your good ideas. There are a lot of ways to grow and scale, but if you want to grow a strong business, it's time to get legally protected. If you're listening and resonating with this, then my signature service, the Legal Upgrade, just might be perfect for you. The Legal Upgrade is a straightforward, structured process to give your business the legal protection that it needs to thrive. Click the link in the show notes and schedule a call with me today. Hello and welcome to the Legal Upgrade Podcast. I'm your host, licensed attorney Christian Hammond. This podcast breaks down the legal side of business to reveal key legal strategies that can help you take your business to the next level. Please note that none of the following is legal, tax, investment, financial, or medical advice. Without further ado, let's get into the show. Just because you paid someone to do a job does not necessarily mean that you legally own the work they've done. Maybe you are a startup and you're hiring developers to build an app for you. Maybe you're launching a fashion brand and you're hiring a designer to design that new line that you're going to launch next season. Maybe you're a business hiring a graphic designer to create a logo for your brand. In all of these cases, if the person you're hiring is a contractor, aka a freelancer, aka someone who is self-employed, if they're a contractor, not an employee, then that means that you do not necessarily legally own the work that they're creating, even though you paid them to do it. This is such an important topic, which is why today we are talking about hiring. Hiring is key for any business, whether you are already working with a full team or whether you are looking to bring on your very first hire. Hiring is so important, so key, and I'm really excited to talk about it with you guys today. So whether you are watching this live on Instagram or whether you are catching the replay with the podcast, so excited that you are here. If you are new, welcome. My name is attorney Christian Hammond. I'm a licensed attorney based in Washington, D.C., and I specialize in business law and trademark law. I help small business owners and entrepreneurs get legally protected so they can grow their business confidently. And like I said, today we are talking about hiring. And I'm really passionate and excited about this, so I am excited to dive in. So, what's the big deal when it comes to hiring contractors? Well, there's been a really big shift in human resources and how people staff up and really just how people go about hiring. There's been a really big shift over the last few decades. There used to be the traditional model of hiring employees. And, if maybe you had one of those really great employee jobs where you got a pension and you could look forward to a certain amount of guaranteed funds in retirement. So for a long time, that was the dream. That's how things worked. That was the system. But like I said, and as you've probably experienced, there's been a really big shift in the market. There's a lot of times now where people are preferring to hire contractors. And from the worker side of things, a lot of people are preferring to be contractors. Maybe they're looking for more flexibility. Maybe they're looking for more control, or maybe they simply prefer to have their own shop. Maybe they used to work for the big marketing firm, or they used to work for the big design house, or they used to work for the big tech company or the big software as a service firm, but now they're doing their own thing. So there's been this really big shift in the labor market. And for you as a business owner, maybe you've had business coaches tell you this, or maybe you've just had other business owners tell you this. A lot of people are preferring to begin their hiring journey with contractors over employees. And there's this perception that, oh, well, it's cheaper to hire a freelancer than to hire an employee, or it's lower risk to hire a contractor over an employee, or it's just easier to hire a contractor over an employee. And while there is some truth to that, I definitely want to dispel the myth that bringing a contractor into your business is just a small thing, or it's super easy, or there's no rules around it, because there are actually quite a few rules around what it looks like to bring a contractor to come work for you, whether you are a solo small business owner bringing on your very first hire, or whether you are a much more advanced company, whether you're a venture-backed startup, whatever the case may be, there's actually a lot of rules around it. So the first thing we need to dispel is this idea that, oh, bringing on contractors is super easy and there's no rules around it and you don't really need to worry about it. There's actually a lot of rules around it. And the key one we're going to be talking about today is who owns the work that that contractor does? Who owns the work that that contractor created? And just talking about this might be surprising to you, because you might be thinking, wait a minute, if I pay someone to do a job, don't I automatically own that? Haven't I already paid for that? Not necessarily. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, in order to understand what's going on here, we need to understand, how do you even go about owning something that someone else does? How do you own the designs that a fashion designer created for your brand? How do you own the app that a developer created for your startup? How do you own the logo that a designer made for your brand? How do you own these things? Well, this is the realm of copyright. You've probably heard the word copyright thrown around, but copyright covers pretty much anything that can be drawn, anything that can be written, anything that can be recorded. It covers everything from computer code to videos, podcast episodes, music, books, blog posts, photography, artwork, you name it. Copyright covers all of that. And when it comes to copyright law, there are only two ways to own something. Or let me say it this way. When it comes to copyright law, there's a big difference between someone who's an employee, W-2 employee. At the end of the year, they get a W-2. And there's a big difference between that employee and a contractor. And I see the question in the comments. I am going to answer your question, Rosemary. And if I don't get to it, catch it on the replay. I promise that I will remember to answer it. But on the subject of copyright, there's a big difference between someone who's an employee and someone who's a contractor. Under copyright law, if your W-2 employee does something within the scope of their employment, then the company automatically owns that. By default, automatic. That's how copyright law works for an employee acting within the scope of their employment. Now, within the scope of their employment is important. It does not necessarily cover things they're doing outside of their employment. And that's a kind of a separate issue that we're not going to talk about today. But if they're a contractor, the company does not own the work they do unless there is a written agreement in place, unless there is a written agreement saying, hey, contractor is giving the copyright over to the company. And that answers the question we have here in the comments. Yes, if you're going to hire a graphic designer to create a logo for your business, and if that graphic designer is a contractor, freelancer, self-employed, whatever you want to call it, if they are someone who did not get a W-2 at the end of the year, then yes, it's super important to have that graphic designer give the copyright to the business. And that happens through a written agreement. So, again, big difference between an employee versus a contractor. And just to clarify, because I know there's so many different terms people use for contractors, but independent contractor, freelancer, subcontractor, self-employed, from a legal and tax perspective, these are all the same thing. It's somebody who gets a 1099 at the end of the year. Now, not everyone gets a 1099 because it depends on what payment method you use to pay them. It depends on whether they're classified as an S Corp or not. So there's some variation, but all these people who do not get W-2s are contractors, AKA independent contractors, AKA self-employed, AKA freelancers. It's all the same thing. Just to clarify that, because I know that people use a lot of different terms to refer to the same thing. So you might be thinking, okay, so if I had a graphic designer, a software developer, if I've had anyone create something for my business, but I didn't have them sign a written agreement, what does that mean? Most likely, it means that the business does not actually own the thing that that person created. And that is very surprising to a lot of small business owners. And that's one of the things that, as a lawyer, I end up helping people untangle and fix. So, to double underline it, there is only one way to legally own a contractor's work, and that is with a written legal agreement. There is only one way to own a contractor's work, and that is with a written legal agreement in writing, on paper, in black and white, on the paper. So, um, and this surprises a lot of people because people or clients come to me and they say, oh, I didn't realize we had to get it in writing because we talked about it, or I didn't realize we needed to sign a contract about it because we emailed about it, or maybe it just never occurred to you that you could pay for something and not legally own it. And I think that this is it's kind of hard when you think about it as intellectual property or when you think about it as copyright, which is why I like to draw a comparison to just normal property. If you have a car, you paid for that car, but you also have a title. You have a literal piece of paper that says that you own the car. If you paid for a plot of land, sure, you paid for it, but you also have a deed. There is a literal piece of paper that says that you own the land. So, in a lot of ways, physical property can help us understand intellectual property. Yeah, you paid for the logo, you paid for the design, you paid for the source code, you paid for whatever it was, but do you have an actual piece of paper that says that your business owns it? And this is really important no matter what kind of business you own. You might think, oh, I'm just starting out, it doesn't matter. Trust me, it will come up eventually. And it's often harder to solve it later rather than sooner. If you are a startup, this is probably going to come up during your funding rounds. Your investors are definitely going to want to know, hey, do you actually own the source code? Do you actually own this app? They're going to want to know, do you actually own this brand? Do you own the logo? So if you're a startup, this is almost certainly going to come up during your funding rounds. Your investors are going to ask these questions. If you are a small business, that this could come up at so many different points in your process. It could come up simply the more successful you become. If you become more and more successful, there's going to be more eyes on you. There's going to be more people noticing you, seeing what you're doing out here. And that old graphic designer that you had do that logo 10 years ago might be like, hey, I didn't want it then, but now I want a piece of this action, even though it's been 10 years later. This might come up depending on what kind of business you have when you decide to franchise. If you reach the point in your business where you want to franchise, you want to have multiple locations, well, guess what? You're going to have to sign agreements with your franchisees. You're going to have to sign agreements with people who are buying into your franchise. And when you sign agreements, you're going to have to give them certain assurances about the fact that you actually own this business and everything in it. And if you can't give those assurances, people might not want to be your franchisees. Or worse, if you make those assurances, but it turns out it wasn't true, you can actually get sued by your franchisees, which happens, franchisors get sued by their franchisees all the time for a variety of reasons. But we definitely want to avoid that if at all possible. If you are a product-based business, this might come up when you start to place your products in larger stores. Again, more visibility, more people noticing, more people seeing it, more people asking questions. These are all things that can come up. Now, if you are here today and you're like, ugh, I wish I'd known this, 6 months ago or 5 years ago, because I've been working with freelancers. I've been working with contractors, subcontractors, independent contractors. I've been working with all of these different businesses that are not, or people who are not my employee, and we didn't have a legal agreement. We didn't have this in writing. I didn't explicitly get them to agree in writing to hand over the copyright so I could own it. If you're in that position, the good news is that these are things that can, in fact, be fixed on the back end. And as a business lawyer, as a trademark attorney, I help my clients. If they're at the beginning, then we help them get the agreement they need at the beginning from the get-go so that everything can go smoothly. And if it's someone who's coming back, a few years into the process, or maybe, more than a few years into the process, maybe you've been at this for 10 years, 20 years, that's okay too. I help people go back and fix what needs to be fixed, go back, get agreements signed if they need to be signed. And so I help people at both sides of the process, whether you're just starting out or whether you are coming after the fact. And this can be sometimes intimidating for people. Sometimes people are like, oh, asking someone to sign over their rights, asking someone to sign over their copyright, that feels really intimidating. That feels really uncomfortable. That sounds so hard to ask. And all of that is something that I very much understand. And I work with my clients to help them see, hey, you might have to do a little bit of education. You might have to educate people a little bit on copyright law and how it works. And ultimately, if you've gone to that person and you've said, hey, I would love you to do this, and this is how much I'm willing to pay, and yes, we'd like to have the copyright afterwards, having those conversations are so key. It puts everyone on the same page. And if you're working with an experienced contractor, an experienced designer, an experienced developer, someone who has a lot of experience, there's a good chance that they're already aware of these rules. They're already aware of how clients like things done. They might even have their own contract for you to sign that already gives you the copyright. But if you're working with someone who's maybe less experienced, hasn't been in the industry as long, or just does not come with their own agreement, then yes, you as the business owner, you might have to do some education. You might have to be upfront and be honest about what you really want and what you're really hoping to buy. And all of that is A-okay. And that is the kind of stuff that I help my clients work through. So I hope that this was really helpful for you guys today. I really hope that this is helping some of you know what you need at the front end so you don't have to go back later. I really hope this is helping those of you who maybe haven't started yet or haven't started hiring yet. I hope this is helping you be able to start off on the right foot so you don't have to fix things later. But no matter where you are in the process, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. And if you need help getting your business legally protected, if you need help either starting off on the right foot or maybe circling back some years later, whichever boat you might be in, if you are looking for help, feel free to reach out. Hit the link in my bio, schedule a meeting, and let's talk. For all of you who tuned in live, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. The Legal Upgrade Podcast is a Bevel Law production. For more information about the Legal Upgrade, you can follow on Instagram at Bevel Law or find even more information on the website bevellaw.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. See you next time on the Legal Upgrade Podcast.